Hello, and welcome to On the Marie Curie Couch, the podcast that aims to break down taboos and start open and honest conversations about death and dying. I'm Jason Davidson. I'm a social worker by profession, and I've worked in palliative care, hospice care, and bereavement support services for more than a decade. Each episode, we'll be speaking to a well-known guest to find out about how they feel about their own mortality and how their personal experience of bereavement has shaped the way they live their life. Today, I'm on the Marie Curie couch with Linda Robson. Linda's an actress and TV presenter and is best known for playing Tracey Stubbs in the much-loved sitcom Birds of a Feather. She also appeared in The Bill, Crossroads and Casualty. Since 2012, Linda's been a regular panelist on ITV's Loose Women. Linda's lived in North London all her life and has been married to her husband Mark for more than 30 years. She has 3 children and 2 grandchildren. Linda Robson, welcome to the Marie Curie couch.
Oh, it's nice to be here.
How are you?
I'm good, I'm really good. Yeah, looking forward to having a little chat and talking about my mum Rita, who we know as Reet. So when she died, we had Reet Petite played at her funeral because she was the finest girl you'd ever meet.
How lovely. Tell me about Rita. Tell me what kind of woman she was.
Well, Rita was one of 13 children. She was born in Dublin in 1936 and she lived in Dublin until my Uncle Noel got polio and was taken away from the house one day and taken to a hospital in the country and was kept there for 2 years. And then my nan started bringing my Uncle Noel over to England to Bart's Hospital because there was a treatment for polio. And my mum came over to visit him and then met my dad and never went back. So if it wasn't for her coming over to visit my Uncle Noel, I probably wouldn't be here. So working wise, she'd always worked. We were quite young, obviously, at the time. And she did a home help. And that is when you go into people's homes, like elderly people's homes, and you do some cleaning for them, you do some shopping for them. The love of her life, apart from her 3 daughters, was bingo. She absolutely loved her bingo. So she'd go sometimes in the afternoons if she wasn't working, but definitely 2 or 3 times a week. And I think one of the highlights of her life was winning £10,000 at bingo and coming home and just throwing the £10,000 in the air. And she took us all away to the caravan for a week with the money that she'd won and that. She was like very, very family orientated, loved her family, her brothers and her sisters, and loved Dublin. And I remember her taking us all there, like as young children, to show us where she lived. And when you think there was 13 children, and my nan and granddad, and there was only 2 bedrooms in the house. So there was 8 boys in one room and 5 girls in another. And then my nan and granddad had a pulled down bed.
And they managed?
Yeah, they managed. They really managed. But there'd be one meal cooked a night, and if you didn't eat that meal, not like our kids now, when you have to do 2 or 3 meals. I've got 2 vegans, so I have to do vegan options all the time. And if you didn't eat that, you'd have bread and butter and jam. That'd fill you up. And I think growing up, because they always filled up on bread, we always have bread with our dinner as well now. And I think that's because my mum, we always had loads of bread, like when we were growing up. Looking back, she didn't really have a lot of friends. She had like her bingo friends, Beryl, Little Lil, Carol. There was 3 or 4 of her sort of mates that she'd go to bingo with. But her whole life was me and my 2 sisters, really. So like if she never went for lunch with her friends or anything. So she'd only we'd take her out for lunch, we'd do her shopping with us. And she was just a really good mum. She was like the matriarch of our family and we all adored her. She also, because I worked from such a young age, she brought my children up. So my oldest daughter, Lauren, I was doing Birds of a Feather at the time and she looked after my kids and she didn't want paying for it. And I said, no, I'm going to pay you. I'm earning really good money and it'll give you your bingo money and you'll be able to go and get shopping and treat yourself to a few things. And she did a really good job with my children. So she'd look after them, and especially if I was away on location, I'd come back and she'd say, after about a week, you've ruined them kids, because they had rules with my mum and they stuck to the rules. Whereas I'd feel guilty because I'd been away filming. So I'd let them probably get away with more or spoil them a bit more. But my kids absolutely adored her.
And actually, if her focus and passion was family and our own daughters, then what a lovely thing for her then to do, to look after your children and have that to be a key
that
focus
your kids
in
were
her
being
life.
looked after so well, because she absolutely loved her grandchildren. So I think she had 8 grandchildren before she died. Now she's got loads of great grandchildren as well. But she did get to meet my granddaughter Lila, so my daughter's daughter, and she was actually in the hospice, Marie Curie Hospice in Lyndhurst Gardens, and we took Lila down to meet my mum. She kept saying, "Oh, he's a lovely boy, he's very handsome, isn't he?" We go, "Mum, it's a girl." "Oh, sunny boy, look at that lovely little boy." But when we used to arrive at the hospice, she'd just for that second, she'd have a big smile on her face because she recognised us, and then the recognition would be gone. But I think the first time we realised that something was wrong was when her partner at the time, Johnny, my stepdad, who we loved as much as we loved our dad as well. He was really lovely. He loved all of us. We nursed him at the end when he was dying as well. But yeah, so we started noticing after he'd died, we thought she's just depressed and that, and she's like grieving Johnny because he wasn't there anymore. And then gradually we started noticing that things weren't right. Like we'd take her out shopping and she'd go missing. And then, but luckily where we live in Islington, our Chapel Market, where it's our local market, everyone knew her down there. So we'd say to Tony on the fruit stall, "Have you seen my mum?" "Yeah, I just saw her going into Iceland." So they'd sort of keep an eye on her again because they started noticing that she'd go missing. We also got her a mobile phone, but she never quite got the hang of how to answer it. So the phone would ring in her pocket. She wouldn't know how to answer the phone. When she started deteriorating more, one of us would stay with her every night. So between me and my 2 sisters and my nieces and nephews, there was always someone there with her looking after her. And she'd also forget, so if we'd take her out shopping, she'd shop as if we still all lived at home. So she'd still be getting this big shop, like getting ready for her Sunday dinner and that, because we always went to her house. And it was quite a small house, but we managed to all squeeze in every weekend. And she'd buy, you know, if my nephews like chocolate eclairs or they like fruit cake or whatever, she'd make sure that she had everything in for them and spoil them all. But she was quite fussy as well. She was immaculate in her house and immaculate in her appearance. She'd never leave the house unless her hair was done and her makeup was done, and she always looked really, really smart. And she could never understand. She used to say, "I don't know where I got you from," because I was never like that. I'd never have my makeup on and my hair done. I'd take the kids to school. I'd be in my nightdress and just put a coat on over it. And she'd go, "Oh, Jesus, I don't know where I got her from. Look at her." She used to say, "Get yourself sorted before you leave the house. You never know who you're going to bump into." But yeah, she loved us girls more than anything. She really, really did. And when she died, we found a letter in her drawer that she left, just saying how much she loved us. I don't, because I'm going to start crying. But just saying how much she loved us and how she hoped we'd always stick together and we'd always be there for each other. And we obviously are there for each other. So I've got 2 sisters. I'm the oldest, and then my sister Tina and my youngest sister Debbie. So we also had a cousin Jackie. We've still got a cousin Jackie, who was like a daughter to her as well. So there was me, Tina and Debbie, and Jackie used to be at the hospice all the time. And we had her 70th birthday in Lyndhurst Gardens. And we made a big fuss and balloons and like all the nieces and all her grandchildren. And everyone came to the hospice and we had a big party for her. But I remember her looking at herself one day and going, "Jesus, look at me, I don't look like that, do I?" You know, like she was sort of shocked at her appearance because she'd got really, really thin and that. And like someone used to come to the hospice and they'd fix her hair. So someone would come and do her hair for her. And I remember when the Pearly Kings and Queens came one day and they started singing, and we never heard her, but she all of a sudden she started singing along with one of the songs, because that is one of the signs, isn't it, that a lot of people with dementia or Alzheimer's, they can remember songs and that. So she started singing along with those. So we all got really emotional. Her favourite song was Sally. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but Sally, Sally, pride of our alley. That used to be her party piece, and she just started singing that as well one day. But she was just like a really, really good mum, and like nothing was too much for her. And as I say, she brought my kids up, and I could never have worked if she didn't do that. But she was...
When was it your mum died, Linda?
She died 10 years ago this year.
Okay.
So we're having a tea party. We had one a few years ago as well, where we have like a tombola and we do bingo calling because that's what she loved. So we get someone to call bingo and then you can win prizes and all the money goes to Marie Curie. I think they've booked it for September. My sister's really organised, Tina. So we're going back to the same venue that we did it a couple of years ago in. And we had a lot of the nurses there. There was there's quite a few nurses that we love.
And I love that, so you can take the opportunity to kind of fundraise, but actually at the same time it's about doing the things that your mum enjoyed, and it's about remembering her and having an opportunity to think about her and playing bingo.
But we've never been like morbid about it all, you know, like, because she had the best life, and she, you know, for her 60th birthday, like Catholic growing up in Ireland, I took her to Rome for her 60th birthday, and we went to St Mark's Square, and the Pope came out and did like, he does it every Sunday, he came out and like does a prayer and whatever, and I just remember her getting really emotional and crying and saying, as a young girl growing up in Dublin, I never thought I'd get to be here and see the Pope. And I just remember her getting, so she never drank tea or coffee, she only ever drank Diet Coke, which was strange to us, you know, like someone that don't have a cup of tea in the morning. But wherever we went, she'd manage. I remember we took her to Disney and she went, they've only got Pepsi here, I wouldn't drink Pepsi. And so we'd have to go and find Coke and that. But so she got all these empty Coke bottles and filled them up with holy water from the walls of the Vatican. There's all holy water, and you just go and fill up the. And I remember getting to the airport, and her case was so heavy. I said, "Mum, you're gonna have to take some of them out." I think it was like 200 quid or something they wanted on top for it. And we sent all her family in Dublin a postcard, because the Vatican has got their own post office there, and it's all like marked with Vatican things and everything. So that was like a real big thing for her.
Really special.
But we used to take her everywhere on holiday with us as well. And she was really proud of the three of us, like me and my two sisters. And she had a habit of saying, of course, you know who my daughter is, don't you, Linda Robson, you know, off the telly. She'd say that to everybody. But she'd say the same about my sisters as well. You know, like she was really proud of the three of us.
You said there that you as a family kind of had never been morbid. Can I ask about your experience of grief after your mother died, and what that was like for you and what helped you?
Well, the first person that really died in my life was my dad, and he died at age 57 from lung cancer, and that was a shock because he was diagnosed 1 week and died a week later, and he was at my house at the time, and he got rushed into hospital, and my dad died in pain because they couldn't, all his veins packed up, and they were talking about amputating his leg, but he died in pain. But with my mum, where she'd been ill for so long, it was just like watching her deteriorate every day. But I have to say she had the best care that anyone could ask. Like, we'd get to the hospice and one of the nurses would be playing cards with her, because she loved playing cards and she loved gambling. Like, it'd only be 10p a game or whatever. But we were always playing cards in our house, and they'd be sitting there playing cards with her, so they always had time. So they weren't just left, there was always someone there. And not only did they look after my mum, but they looked after me and my sisters as well.
One of the things we hear from people who listen to the podcast is that they find it really helpful hearing other people's stories about the death of the person, you know, the death of their loved one, but also about what things helped them after the death. So when they were grieving, and I just kind of wonder whether you could talk a little bit about that. You know, what was it like when your mum wasn't around anymore? It
was really, really hard for all of us because she'd been such a big part of our life. And I think what helped us was like memories, really. So from when she died, and we used to go to the cemetery every Sunday, Finchley Cemetery, and we'd bring all our kids with us as well. But we always made it a really nice day out. So especially when it was sunny, like in the summer when we went over, we'd bring picnics over, and we'd bring some blankets and sit on the floor. We also had a bench with her name on it over there, so we could sit on the bench. And that we've actually just changed the bench, so she's got a nice new bench now. Because my dad's buried next to her, and my dad's tombstone is slightly bigger, so we said our mum would be fuming with that, because that he's got a bigger tombstone than she has. But so yeah, we'd just all go over.
So she's got a bench as well.
She's got a bench. Yeah. I know, yeah. But his tombstone is slightly bigger, so I don't know how we did that, but we did. And she even arranged her own funeral. Because I don't know what it's like in other cultures, but in the Irish culture, it's like you've got to have a big send-off, you know, like, so the more cars and the more mourners that turn up, the better, and the more you were thought of as well. Because I remember as a young child, my aunt going, you know, they had 18 cars for that funeral. Oh, she must have been well liked then. So my mum organised the funeral. She even like paid into an insurance policy, because that's what they did in those days, so that there'd be enough money to cover their funeral, because they wanted this nice send-off. So she had a horse and carriage that took her from her house to our local church, Our Lady in St Joseph's in Ballspond Road. And then from there, but so many people turned up as well, obviously all her family. But when she was in the undertakers, they had like a wake where you all sit around the coffin, and like my sisters went in and saw her, and I decided I didn't want to see her because I was there with her when she died. And what really upset me was that her mouth was open, like she died and her mouth was open, and I remember the nurses trying to close her mouth so that she looked more peaceful. They were lovely, they were so lovely. And not long after she died, like all my nieces and nephews were there, and we all sat around the bed. And I remember them all in McDonald's. So they all sat round. And my mum loved McDonald's as well. She really, really liked her burger. And she loved the milkshakes in there, strawberry milkshakes, you know. And we just all sat around. And obviously we were all crying. But the one thing that I remember is, which I think is really important, is that my mum died pain-free. And we were all there with her in the room. Me, my two sisters, my cousin Jackie, were just all sitting around her. And we stayed there that night. And then I remember one of the nurses tapping me on the shoulder the next morning and saying, she's gone. And I was like half asleep. And I went, gone where? And they went, she's gone, Linda. And then we all started sobbing, obviously. But I think you sort of prepare yourself then because she'd been in there for so long. And just let me tell you this story. So her last ever outing was when I was doing Birds of a Feather on tour with Leslie and Pauline, and it was at the Cliffs Pavilion in Southend. And so my sisters and my kids all brought her down to the Cliffs Pavilions to see Birds of a Feather, and she was sitting in the audience, and my youngest daughter Bobby was sitting next to her, and she went, Mum, you'll never guess what Nanny's done. I said, what's she done? She went, she started undressing during the show. So she took off her jumper and put it on the seat in front of her. Then she took off her boots and put them on the floor. Then she took off her socks and put them on the man's shoulders in front of her. My daughter was absolutely traumatised. She was going, it was so embarrassing. Everyone was looking. Nanny was stripping off. I said, oh, don't. It's fine, Bobs. Honestly, people understand and that. And then we took her to an Italian restaurant. And it was actually my birthday as well. Yeah, so there was Pauline and Leslie and me, my two sisters, their kids, my kids and that, and we all went to an Italian restaurant. And then the next day she went into Marie Curie, or maybe the day after, it might have been 2 days after. She went into Marie Curie and for a week respite because she wasn't eating at home and we were worried about her. And they came down to see her, like a social worker or whoever it is, and said, I think she needs to go into a hospice. We need to build her up where she's not eating. And we went to Lyndhurst Gardens and we saw it and we just thought, oh my God, what a beautiful place for her to be, you know, and it was so lovely. It really, because they've got lovely grounds and everything. And my mum used to smoke, and she packed up smoking. Like, we took her to the doctors and they gave her some tablets that stopped her smoking, but she always loved her cigarettes. Like, growing up, she used to smoke players, like non-tip ones and that. And my dad smoked as well, and he died of lung cancer. So, yeah, she used to like her cigarettes, but then she stopped. And then I think when she got dementia, she forgot that she'd stopped. So we'd take her to the supermarket and she'd run off and sneak in and get herself a packet of cigarettes. Then she'd hide them indoors so we couldn't see them. But we caught her loads of times. But she actually lit up on the ward one day as well. She started smoking the cigarette. She was smoking away, and then the alarms went off and everything.
But it's so important to see the humour in that as well, because just because somebody's ill and someone's dying, it doesn't mean that life completely stops, actually.
No, we laugh all the time because she was such a funny woman. She could be quite rude as well, you know, like the ward sister walked in one day and she's quite a big lady and she went, Jesus, will you look at the size of her? And we go, shut up, Mum, shut up, you know, like.
So it sounds like what's helped you with your grief has been the kind of memories as well. So some of those memories you've talked about, certainly the memories are surrounding her actual death and the time of her death and afterwards, and the family being around, but also the sort of things that you and the family have done since then as well, you know, like the bench, I think, and even funerals afterwards as well, you know, I mean.
Yeah,
you know,
we've got pictures of her everywhere indoors and that, so my granddaughters now know who Nanny Rita was, Reet Petite was, you know. Like.
Yeah, and I wonder how that kind of passes down, you know. I was wondering how your children's experience of grief had been as well when my nan died, and then of course when they become parents.
Well, my daughter Lauren, so that's my oldest daughter, she was like from 3 years of age when I was working, and sometimes I'd be away filming and whatever, so she lived with my mum really. So her and my mum were particularly close. and she spent a lot of time with her and Johnny, my mum's partner, and that. So I think out of all the grandchildren, they all took it really, really bad, all of them, because they all adored her. But I think Lauren in particular, because like Lauren would be there, like Christmas time, Lauren would go around, do all her wrapping, write all her Christmas cards out for her and that. So they were really, really close. But they all were, all the grandchildren were.
Do they do anything in particular to remember their nan?
My grandchildren now, they say if they see a star in the sky, they go, that's Nanny Rita up there. They also say, because we had 2 dogs, so they go, that's George up there, that's Ernie up there. So they associate death with like stars in the sky, which is quite a nice thing to...
That's lovely.
And they didn't really see us crying that much because we did a lot of laughing, because she was a funny woman, even though she knew she didn't know she was, because she had no sense of humour whatsoever. She hated comedies. She didn't like music. She liked all the CSIs, all the murder things. And sometimes I'd get home with my children and be watching CSI. They go, Nan, someone got murdered. I go, Mum, don't put that on when the kids are there. She goes, oh, they're fine, they're fine. But she'd always like make a fuss of them, and they'd have like tea parties. She'd get them all sweets and sit them all around the table and everything. And they loved her. And they were really good for her as well. She was an amazing woman. She really, really was.
Marie Curie's Great Daffodil Appeal brings together millions of people across the UK to volunteer, fundraise, donate and wear a daffodil. With your help, Marie Curie can support everyone in the UK and push for a better end of life for all. To get involved, visit mariecurie.org.uk/daffodil.
What sort of practical things do you think people can do for each other, Linda, when they're grieving, or for others?
Well, my friend Red Redwoods has just lost her son, and it's like everyone goes, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know whether to ring her. I don't know whether to pop round and see her. So I just text her the day that he died on the Sunday night and just said, there are no words, but I'm here if you need to talk to anyone or if you need anything. And then the next day I went to her house, and I thought I won't go in because I'm not family, although I am close to Brenda. And so I just bought some flowers, and I thought I'll just leave them at the door, you know, like. And then her daughter came to the door and said, no, come in, Mummy wants to see you. And the first thing Brenda said was, don't cry. I went, no, I won't cry, Brenda. And so since then I've just sent her, just now and again, I'll just send her a kiss, just to let her know I'm thinking of her. And I actually sent her another card today as well. It's just to let people know that you're thinking of them, and just to let them know that if there's anything you can do, nothing's going to take that pain away. Nothing at all, nothing, no words, no nothing. She's lost her boy. And just to let her know that we're thinking of her, and if there is anything we can do, and if she needs to have a chat, I'm there. I can sit with you for hours and have a chat to you. And just to try not to avoid people, because I think a lot of people, it's called when they cross the road, isn't it, or whatever, because they don't know what to say. And I think probably I was guilty of that with some of my friends' parents that have died, because you don't know what to say. But I just think as I've got older, I'd rather say, I don't know what to say, and no words I can say are ever going to help you. But if there is anything I can do, if you need anything, you want me to do anything for you, I'm there for you.
I think that's a lovely way to be able to kind of, I mean, it's just, as you're saying, it's so important to reach out, isn't it? You know, and say to someone, because actually it can be a really isolating, lonely experience as well. And so, you know, to send a text message, or just to send a kiss via text, or to write a card. You don't have to
answer me. You don't have to send me back a text. It's like, you just
not
know that, it's not
how are you,
it's just sending you a kiss.
I'm thinking of you and I'm here.
Yeah, just to let you know that we're thinking of you.
And I just think that that importance of connection and reaching out, you know, just remind you, just even, I think, writing a card, sending a text, letting somebody know you're there.
It's like, and not getting upset if they don't reply to you, because they've got a lot on their plate at that time, you know. And it'll take a long, long time before life feels normal again. But it does, because now, obviously, we were distraught. Weren't eating, you know, like, it was just like sitting crying all the time, and then gradually we turn it into nice memories, and nice things and happy things that we did, or funny things that she said. And she said some funny things. She had some funny sayings as well. I can't say some of them because they're swear words in it, although she never swore. She was a good Catholic girl. And we were never allowed to swear in front of her. And if you swore on a Sunday, oh my God, you'd be struck dead by lightning, she'd say. But she was funny. She was really fun. She absolutely adored my dad. So she's buried with my stepdad, Johnny, that we loved, and my dad's next door to her. So she's got the two men in her life, one that side and one on top of her.
I'm going to change tack a bit slightly with my questions. Linda, thank you so much for sharing some of Rita's story and telling me about that description in the beginning, certainly about her kind of growing up and, you know, what she was like as a woman. I got a real sense of her actually when you were talking. It's lovely to hear, and so thank you. And I want to ask now whether you ever think about your own death.
It's funny because we spoke about this a little while ago on Loose Women, and I got told off for not having a will. Because in my head, my mum was very superstitious. There were certain things that we weren't allowed to do, like you never put new shoes on a table. There was loads of things. If you saw a coffin, you had to hold your collar till a four-legged animal, till you see a horse or a dog or whatever. And so that stuck with me, and my children and my grandchildren now do that as well. So there's lots of things that have followed through. Really, really superstitious. Yeah, so I haven't written a will, and I should write a will because I've got a daughter by a previous relationship and then 2 children with my husband that's there now. So I often worry that she won't get what I think the 3 of them are all entitled to. But in my head, I think if I write a will, I'm going to die. I think it's like tempting fate. So I've often put off. I spoke about it on Loose Women a little while ago, and everyone was going, "Oh, you should get a will. You should do your will, Linda. You should do your will." And I suppose I will have to do it one day. But I just want...
But I don't think you're alone in feeling that, you know, because I think some people do link the two completely, don't they? Yeah. Kind of writing a will and dying. But actually what you've just described is the reason why you want to write a will is for all of those, all the right reasons, which is to make sure that, you know, what you have goes where you want it to go. Yeah. And so having control over that and having choice over that and being able to make that decision so that you're doing that for yourself, and then you put it in a drawer, and it may take a couple of hours with the solicitor one afternoon, but then you put it in a drawer and it's done. If it's not done when you die, then what we do know, certainly from our organisation and the people we meet, there can often be complications and conflict in families when things haven't been just planned for.
I've seen it in certain funerals that I've been to, and there's not been a will, and then people kick off or whatever. Yeah.
But then also I kind of get that, you know, that fear of it as well. It sounds a bit like a superstition.
It does, yeah, and that's why we're very superstitious, all of us, because our mum did that to us. Like, we could never leave the house without blessing ourselves. She'd shout down as we left the house every morning, "Bless yourselves!" So we'd be blessing ourselves as we walk out the door.
So you haven't talked about your own funeral wishes or what you would want when you die? For example, if you want to be buried or cremated? Or... I
always thought I wanted to be buried, but now I've changed my mind because my daughter's dad died in August last year. Okay. And so he was cremated, so they've got the ashes. So his partner then had little necklaces made, and they've got their ashes in the necklaces. And first of all, my daughter said, "Oh no, I don't want it, because I want all his ashes to be together. I don't want it like to separate him. I want him to stay as he was." But now I think, like, 'cause sometimes when you go to the cemetery, it's freezing cold, it's raining, and it's like, and it can be quite a depressing place. But I just think if you can, like, bring the urn with the ashes in, like if you go on holiday, you can take them with you or whatever, and it feels like they're still part of it. So now I think I'd like to be cremated so they can keep me with, they might not want to keep me with them, but I'd make sure they do. But yeah, I'd like to be with them always. And the necklace is a really nice thing to do. So my granddaughters have got a necklace with their granddad in. It's just a tiny little star with a tiny little bit of his ashes in and that. So I'd like to think that part of me could be with them always.
How would you like to be remembered when you die?
I'm very honest. Sometimes it gets me into trouble because I am very honest, but I think I'm like that because my mum was like it. But I'm never horrible, I'm never mean to anybody. I've got a good heart and I care about people. Yeah, no, I'd just like to be known as a good woman, really, that has got good morals. I care about things, I care about people. I'm never horrible to anybody. And yeah, just a good woman. And good women are scarce, as my mum used to say.
Just before we finish, Linda, can I ask what it's meant to you today to be on the Marie Curie couch?
Well, To be on the Marie Curie couch, I can never ever thank Marie Curie enough for what they did for us, and especially for my mum, because towards the end of her life, like, we were all there, and you know, people often talk about, you know, amazing births, oh, it was a lovely birth or whatever, but my mum had a lovely death because she was surrounded by her loved ones. She was pain-free and she went peacefully in her sleep. And that's what they say a lot of the time, is when people are talking, they try and stay awake or stay alive to hear what they're saying. And when me and my two sisters and my cousin went asleep that night, that's when my mum went asleep, pain-free. And hopefully she's with my dad now. And all the rest of my family, her brothers and sisters, there's not many of them left. So she'll be up there playing bingo.
If anyone listening is grieving themselves, do you have any words of advice?
It's a really hard one, it really, really is. But I just think that the way we got through it was talking about her all the time, and talking about mostly the good times and the funny times and the different sort of habits that she had. I just think we just sat laughing about all the funny things that she did. And there was lots of them over the years. There really, really was.
And it keeps her there.
It does, yeah.
The conversation, talking about somebody who's died, keeps them there.
Yeah, it does. And it's just like, sometimes we just sit and chat and laugh, and I just think it makes me happy to talk about her. And it's made me happy to share what a wonderful life she had and how loved she was and how well Marie Curie looked after her. Because not only did they look after her, they looked after us as well.
Linda Robson, thank you so much for joining me on the Marie Curie couch today. Thank you for being so open and honest and sharing some of Rita's story. It's been a real pleasure to meet you.
Oh, thank you. I wouldn't have missed it for anything.
So that's all for this episode of On the Marie Curie couch. We hope it's got you thinking about matters of life and death, and perhaps starting those conversations with your own friends and family. Marie Curie's here to help. From planning ahead to coping with bereavement, you can talk through any concerns you have around the end of life with our support line team, which also includes specially trained nurses. Call us on 0800 080 2309 or search Marie Curie online. The podcast is produced and edited by Marie Curie with support from Ultimate Sound and Vision. The music featured is Time Lapse by Pan-Oceanic. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do like and subscribe. Thanks for listening, and until next time, goodbye.